We now move on to our next session for the day, a fireside chat on the topic from Petro to Electro, the journey towards no emission mission. This session will discuss the opportunity, challenges, and the roadmap ahead for leading the EV market, making India self-reliant and the next innovation in this space. Our speakers this evening are Raghav Gulur, Senior Vice President and Head of Engineering, IES Enterprise, Tech Mahindra, and Naveen Munjal, Managing Director, Hero Electric. Raghav is passionate about building and leading high technology companies and engineering centers by developing globally competitive management and engineering teams critical to growth. He has hands-on experience in building the first technology offshore product SCI CMM Level 5 company specialized in automotive and related technologies from India. Naveen's leadership and vision is widely recognized in shaping the Indian electric two-wheeler industry, as well as his contributions to various forums in the electric vehicle sphere, both in India and globally. It's a pleasure to have both of you here with us this evening. Over to you, Naveen and Raghav.
Thank you, Mr. Justin. Good evening for all in India. Good morning and good afternoon for the participants from other countries. On September 18, 2021, just a couple of weeks ago, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, he tweeted saying that the global warming on Earth has reached catastrophic levels, which is breaking the promise made at the Paris Convention in 2015 of pursuing 1.5 degrees centigrade pre-industrial levels. And why did he make this comment was that there was a report that was coming from the UN framework of climatic changes, which said that the temperature is going up to 2.7 degrees, way beyond 1.5 degrees, which probably would have a serious impact on the lives and livelihood with massive destruction and also probably loss of life. And when you really look at that, there are many contributing factors which is really raising this temperature. And auto is not the first, but certainly automotive contributes as one of the major factors. Close to about 20% of it is coming from that. In that context, I feel this particular session, talking about Petro to Electro, the journey towards a no emission mission is very, very odd. To discuss that, we have Mr. Naveen Munjal, the Managing Director of Hero Electric. I call him a pioneer in electric two-wheeler industry because he actually started in 2007 with lead-acid battery-based product. And this is a time that not many people are really talking about EV, and certainly not EV two-wheelers so much. But he soon switched over in 2017 to lithium-ion, and today there are more than 300,000 vehicles on road. And in the process of doing this, he has introduced many firsts in the industry in the process. And pleasure to have you, Mr. Naveen Munjal, and then thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Raghav. My pleasure being here today. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Naveen. Naveen, you have been recognized for shaping electrical two-wheelers in India and contribution to various international forums all these years. What do you think are the challenges that we need to meet the goal that is agreed in the Paris Convention, specifically in general and specifically from automotive industry with your interaction in the international forums and also in
India? Thank you, Raghav. Thank you for having me here. So I'm going to focus this question more on what India can do. And this is going to be more about what the role of India when we talk about the Paris Agreement and the reduction of limit the warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade. So basically, when we look at it from an automotive perspective, when we look at it from an urbanization perspective, automobile plays a very, very important role in the greenhouse gases that are actually emitted, in the carbon emissions that we actually have in our cities. So one of the first factors that we have to do is actually reduce our carbon emissions that we have, reduce the PM 2.5 that we have in our cities. And a large part of that is attributable towards automotive. Of course, there are other factors as well. There's industrial, there's crop burning that happens, and there is construction dust, etc., that also has a role to play in all of this. But we have to take one step at a time. We have to bridge all of these. And this is the time when we actually need to be taking action. when we look at the Paris Accord, when we look at the Paris Agreement, etc., there's a very wide spectrum that it covers. It covers, things like poverty, etc. But it also covers the air pollution that we actually have, the environment that we have, and the temperature that is increasing. So we need to limit global warming, and we need to look at it from a perspective of land, energy, industrial buildings, transport, and cities. So let me focus more on the transport point at this point, the transport sector at this point of time. When we talk about moving towards net zero, a large part of our urban air pollution or air that we need to control, it comes from transport. This transport, we need to really start moving towards cleaner forms of transport. And how that would happen is, at this point of time, the best option that we possibly have is a zero emission, which is of electric vehicles. Now, to reach the electric vehicles, now to get electric vehicles in any mass volume in India, in a country like India, where 80% of the vehicles are actually the smaller two-wheeler vehicles. So what we need to do is we need to look at mobility as not as a whole one unit, but break it up into different units. So we've got the two-wheelers, we've got three-wheelers, we've got four-wheelers or cars, and then we've got commercial vehicles and passenger and public transport. All of them will take off at a different stage at a different time. All of them have different infrastructural requirements. Now, in order for us to move towards zero emission and in order for us to move towards cleaner air, the base of that pyramid, when we call it, is going to be formed by the two-wheelers, because that's going to be the low-hanging fruit. The price parity between an IC engine vehicle or emitting vehicle and a non-emitting vehicle has reduced substantially. The total cost of ownership, which was already in the favor of electric mobility, has widened hugely in favor of, again, electric vehicles, the total cost of ownership. Now, the limiting factors which are there are a number of limiting factors. One of them is the lack of infrastructure. We have a very, very poor infrastructure when it comes to electric mobility infrastructure in India. So we need that to come in a very, very deep manner. It needs to be wide and it needs to be deep. So which means that, we've got to have covered the entire country, and then we've got to drill down and go down into the cities and go down into the building housing complexes, etc. So it's got to go both ways. Now, the requirements that we have for two-wheelers versus what we have for other forms of vehicle of the category are very different from each other. So what you need for two-wheelers is a dense but basic charging infrastructure. Most of the people will be charging the vehicles at home, and they will be going and topping up when they go out into the market, when they go out into the businesses, offices, etc. So you just need a dense but basic charging infrastructure. Now, the limiting factors there are, one, of course, the charging infrastructure. The second is financing of these vehicles, which needs to come in a much more serious manner. In fact, we should actually include electric mobility as a part of CSR activities, and there should be tax rebates, etc. Also, the lending rates that we give from banks should actually be preferred lending rates that we have. It shouldn't be on the regular lending rates. At this point of time, the amount of investment which is required towards that is substantial. Reskilling of workforce is required in order to actually manufacture these vehicles, fix these vehicles, service these vehicles. So there is going to be reskilling required. The skill set is quite different from what we had in the conventional manner, because here there's a lot more electronics and electrical components involved. So we need infrastructure to come in. We need the skilling, reskilling. Awareness is a very, very important factor when it comes to consumers. So we need to create those campaigns. But one of the most critical factors, so let me talk about what's already working. So we've got the FAME 2 policy, which came into play in 2019, and that's been amended in June of this year. And that's become a good policy now. But what we need is long-term goals. We need long-term goals whereby we want to be completely electric, or we want to be completely zero emission. Now, when you work backwards from there, what happens is, the infrastructure will fall in place, financing will fall in place, supply chains will fall in place, all your dealerships, everything will fall in place once we have that cutoff date or once we have that deadline, which is a very, very critical one. And then all the policies that we've got, whether it is central or the state policies, all of them need to be working in sync in one direction. We shouldn't have a different thing where one policy is going off into a different direction and another policy is going into a different direction. So all of them, whether it is the PLI policies, whether it is the FAME policies or the state policies, one goal: we have to move towards zero emission. We have to move towards electrification. So there are some challenges which are there, but at the same time, I am very, very bullish on the sector. We've been in the sector for a long time. We are very, very strong believers that India is going to move towards electric, and India has to. We don't have an option. I mean, when you look at it from a pollution standpoint, and when you look at it from COVID, and you look at it from other factors, we have to move in that direction.
Thanks, Naveen. As you said that, I think India produces, I mean, second largest country in the world of the two-wheeler producer, and manufactures close to about 20 million vehicles, except for the last 2 years when it really went down to about 15, 16 million, but more than 20 million on an annual basis. And there are already 10 times that, about 220 million vehicles. If you really address that segment and start working on that, really transforming the segment to electrification, I think is a huge advantage in reducing global warming, also the clean air part of it. And then when you're talking about it, people are also talking about the 2020, the goal is to reach about 10 to 15% of the vehicles which are electric. Today it's about 1.5%. I think it's about 150,000 vehicles on the road. And then probably by 2030, we'll have close to about 30%. Do you think that that is possible? And if, because you have been again leading this professional association, and then been kind of suggesting to the policy makers what really needs to be brought into the policies so that it can really help this industry. So from your perspective, is this goal possible? If this goal is possible, what changes are needed in terms of policies that top two people can really drive this or accelerate this kind of adoption in the two-wheeler market or two-wheeler segment?
So Raghav, we believe that this goal of saying 30%, as I was saying in my previous moments, that we shouldn't look at it as one unit. We shouldn't look at all electric as one unit. We should actually be looking at it as different parts. So when we talk about 2030, actually, in fact, two-wheelers can convert to electric much faster than 2030. The goal that we were looking at was more like 2027, by which time we could be completely electric. That's 6 years away. It's not very far off. But at the same time, it's far off that you can create that infrastructure. You can do that reskilling. You can invest into the technology and everything. So it's not about there's going to be no job losses. There's going to be nothing of that sort because people will graduate towards a different sector. So what we're saying is that two-wheelers, we can set a more aggressive goal and then work backwards from there. For other forms of vehicles, cars will probably be next. Three-wheelers already happening in a meaningful manner. And public transport is also again happening. Commercial vehicles, I think, are going to be slightly far out because the requirements for commercial are slightly different than what they are for other forms of vehicles. So if we look at two-wheeler perspective, I would say that we need to have far more aggressive goals. To have 30% by 2030 is not strong enough because conversion will happen at a very slow pace then. If you look at it, I mean, let me give you an example. Last year, we went from BS4 to BS6, and there was a very clear-cut deadline which was there. Now, had that deadline not been there, had it been an open goal, how many companies and how many would have really invested into it? So once you have that goal in mind, everything falls in place. And that goal needs to be not too far out. It needs to be there. It needs to be a balanced goal. It shouldn't be too aggressive. It shouldn't say that, in the next 2 years we need to convert. At the same time, if it's too far off, then it loses essence. So I would say, next 5 to 6 years is a good goal for two-wheelers to start to convert to electric.
What you're saying is that the technology is probably there, but we need to really work on the infrastructure and the support system can really make that possible to reach this goal, maybe 100%, whatever it is by, because you always told that by 2027 you should start even selling these fuels, especially for the two-wheelers, so that it can be adopted much faster. Thanks
Absolutely.
for that. And then you also see that India is the second largest production of two-wheelers, and then it's a huge opportunity for us to really get in there, both from a business perspective as well as from the engineering perspective. Do you think that we are really exploiting the engineering R&D or the benefits that can really contribute to that? Specifically in terms of when we are talking about development of technology, are we really innovating enough? And are we really collaborating enough, specifically with the industry, research, startups, services industry? Are they really coming together and contributing to this part? And the third is, of course, on the standardization. Because when you're talking about the charging stations, you're talking about battery swapping. So if you really feel that, travel enough distance there, or is there something that we have more things to do?
So let me put it this way, that there is far more work happening now than what was happening last year. Now, is that enough? I mean, that's to do with the scale as well. At this point of time, the market is only 1% of the entire market. So how much scale does it require to actually propel it forward in terms of the R&D, etc.? There is far more money being spent on R&D than was being spent in the last couple of years back, or even last year or thereafter. So there is far more work required. When we look at the drivetrains, for example, we've got the batteries. We are still not manufacturing the batteries. Now we've got the PLI in place. We are a little bit too late for that. Nevertheless, we need to put that in place now. I believe there's a number of companies which have already shown interest in the PLI scheme, which has come in for battery manufacturing, the ACC batteries. Like this, when we look at the drivetrains, we look at the motor manufacturing, we look at all of the components, there is a lot of investment which is still required. We are making heavy investments, but it's still not enough. So a lot more work needs to go in there. Like I was saying, when we look at the various schemes, for example, when we look at there's a strong initiative, that's for sure. There's a strong push by the government that is clearly there. But at the same time, a lot of them should be inclusive, should include a very wide spectrum of companies to come in. As you drill down and as you go down to the MSMEs as well, the volume of the amount of innovation that's going to come out of there can be huge, it can be immense. So we need to drill down a lot more than what we are doing at this point of time. There is innovation happening, but again, that is to do with the scale that is there in the market also. So last year, for example, it was just about 150,000 unit market or 170,000 unit market. What we believe in the next couple of years is this is going to be a 4 million unit market from a two-wheeler perspective in the next 4 to 5 years. That's the base case scenario. Now, so a lot of work is still required to get to that level, whether it's infrastructure, it's R&D, it's the money spent in researching new technologies, etc. We are a little bit behind on that, but nevertheless, I believe we will catch up. India will have a very significant role to play on a global level.
So what are the practical environmental challenges? For example, the raw material, when you talk about lithium, cobalt, or even nickel. Are we really having sufficient enough? Because they say that looking at the demand, the production of these or the extraction, that is not fast enough. And second is, how do you really dispose these used batteries? And of course, you talked enough about the charging station. So how do you really, what do you see as the challenges here, and then how can you really overcome those challenges from India perspective?
See, the writing is clearly on the wall that we have to move towards electrification, and that's something that we are going to do. Now, what needs to happen is that companies who have been investing into mining and who've been doing all the supply chain and who've been going into the raw materials, etc., they need to start investing into all of that now. We are actually late already. They should have been doing that for the past many, many years. There's no reason, if we don't have the raw materials in the country, there's no reason why we cannot invest into mines and other infrastructure and other companies in different countries, whether it's Chile or it's Colombia or it's Australia or any of these places. Indian companies can definitely go there. Now, there has been an initiative by the government, which is the Kabul initiative, which came into as a consortium for three PSUs to come together and start exploration of mining, etc., whether it's in India or abroad. That's a good initiative. Now we need to push that forward because that is where we're going to have energy security for us, or raw material security for us. So there is work required there. I don't think we've done enough work at this point of time. And again, it's a chicken and egg situation. A lot of companies want to go there, but they're waiting for the market to develop a little bit. And the market is waiting for Indian companies to actually go and invest. So I think we need to start doing that at a meaningful level. Now, in terms of the batteries themselves, there is, again, a lot of work happening, which is on the BMS. There's a lot of work happening on the battery packaging, etc. Cell manufacturing, like I said, has not started in India yet, simply because of the scale and the volumes and the level of investments, etc. But I believe that's also going to happen because we've got the 18,000 crore or the PLI in place to support this sector. The other factor is about what you were talking about, the battery disposal. Now, battery disposal is not such a big it's not such a big problem at this point of time, because what will happen is the batteries that come out of the cells or the batteries that come out of vehicles will not go in straight for recycling. They will go in for refurbishment And then they will go in for stationary applications, your UPS, inverters, and all of those applications, where the load on the batteries is not as much. They will remain there for a number of years, and then they will go in for recycling. And even when they go in for recycling, there are, I believe, some recycling plants being set up now where they will extract the different minerals and the different materials from the batteries, because it's all expensive, whether it's a cobalt or nickel or lithium, etc. These are all extractable. And then they would go into making new batteries again, which could be more for, not so much for automotive application, but they could be for stationary applications. So there is a very long cycle, a life cycle that we have for lithium ion batteries. These are not going to go into recycling immediately after their first usage. They will go into second and tertiary and third usages, etc.
So one last question, maybe you can choose to answer this because this entry of Tesla is good for India, specifically from innovation and also the ecosystem perspective, and also probably from the competition perspective, specifically for some of these manufacturers of the vehicles. Then how do you see that from your perspective?
I think it's very good. I think it's very good for Tesla to come into India. It gives, it'll pull up the market, certainly. More companies coming in, more noise being created in the market, more marketing dollars being spent in the market, more awareness for the people will certainly pull up the market, and more in the premium sector will also, again, there'll be a lot of aspirational buying also happening. So Tesla coming in is actually going to be very, very good for the market. We know that at that price point, the market is much smaller. It's a pyramid system that we have. I mean, as is with the other countries. So it's going to be, the numbers may not be as significant as they may be for the lower priced vehicles. Nevertheless, it's going to be enough to create that whole buzz. So Tesla coming in is very, very good for India.
Thank you, Mr. Munjal. It was a pleasure talking to you. And then wish you the best in terms of driving this country towards greener and cleaner India with your efforts that have been doing that and standing the test of time all these years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Raghav. Thank you for having me. And thank you, NASSCOM, for having me again. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naveen and Raghav, for that brilliant fireside chat on the topic, from Petro to Electro, the journey towards no emission mission.